It's that time of the year again. We're right on top of media days, and I wanted to have a quick rundown of a subject that pops up every now and then. This is the top 10 programs, the best job in college football. And I saw this online. I'm not going to read it uh, verbatim. I think this is a pretty good grouping, but I don't know if I would have it quite this way. Going backwards, Oklahoma at number 10, Clemson at 9, Notre Dame at 8, Texas A&M at 7, USC at 6, Texas at 5, LSU at 4, Ohio State at 3, Georgia 2, and Alabama at 1. Um, I think Texas A&M being considered a top 7 program in the country might be a little high for my taste. I think Georgia in the top 5, whatever, is about right. I mean, the problem is once you start ranking all of these, um, it becomes a very complicated thing. Alabama is probably not the number one job if Nick Saban's not there. So we've seen a lot of coaches come and go at Alabama and not have success. Anybody between Gene Stallings and Nick Saban was not very successful in Alabama, and that's just what it was. And honestly, I mean, although I think that there was certainly some success between the Bear and Gene Stallings, there wasn't the type of success that would make you think, oh, immediately that's the number one job. I would say the same thing about about I mean Clemson being in the top nine. It's not no. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, you've had a lot of success for a 5 year period. In Oklahoma, maybe. And I'm just going off the top of my head here. I think LSU is the best positioned job in the country in terms of when you take a look at everything. There's really no excuse that you not win at LSU. And the last three people who have been there have won the national championship. So there you go. We're talking about three different coaches. Two of them were not that great. They just weren't. And they were okay. Ed Orgeron was not a good coach. He won the national championship there. When you look at, um, you know, LSU was rekindled under Nick Saban. Will the next two coaches at Alabama win the national championship? My guess would be no. What we've seen at Georgia over time has been failure. Okay. What we've seen at LSU is it's been where it's supposed to be. Would we really? I mean, Notre Dame. I, the jobs where you should win are as follows, and not necessarily in order: Georgia, LSU, Texas, USC. Those places you should win at. I don't know why Miami's not a top job. It's a better job than Clemson. Just being straight up. I mean, if you put Dabo at Miami, would he win? They just hit the right. People confuse hitting it the right way for a while with something being what it's not. I mean, in the 90s, Tennessee would have been on this list. It, it's and Georgia probably wouldn't, which would have been a mistake. I mean, what you have to look at moving forward in the future is what is your position in college football? Are you a power right now? And I mean, obviously Georgia and Alabama, Ohio State, you could make the case for them being number one. LSU, you could make the case for them being number one. Georgia, Texas, USC. I can't make the case for Texas A&M being number one because I can't make them as being the case for being number one in their state. Notre Dame, that is too tricky a situation for me to say they're number one. They could be number one. I can't do that. Clemson, no, I already discussed that. Oklahoma, no. And the reason why with Oklahoma is you do not have readily available to you the talent you need to win all of the time. We have not seen Oklahoma have this moment in 20 years. That's a problem, and I think that we don't know what it's going to be like for the new head coach there. We will see. I don't think we're going to watch them hoist a trophy anytime soon. If you pick up DAWGSTRUCTION today, which you should be doing before I run out of these books, you get this 80-page commemorative edition of the 2021 season, and along with that, of course, our 2022 preview. The 2022 preview is not going to be reprinted. So get this now while you can. The best way to get it is with DAWGSTRUCTION. Order today. If you want the link to either of these, it's down below. Our friends at Red Zone, I think, still have. I know they still have the magazine. I don't know about DAWGSTRUCTION. So pick up DAWGSTRUCTION now before I have to reorder it. Alabama is always going to be a top 5 or top 10 situation. They're very close to Atlanta. The tradition there is, I mean, it's better tradition than anywhere. I mean, I can't, you really can't say Notre Dame's got a better tradition. They certainly don't have as many national championships, and I don't just mean the ones from the Birmingham Touchdown Club. But when you look at where we're really at here, this is a snapshot of today. I don't know that that means it's going to be uh, what the future will hold in the future. LSU should always be good at football. When they're not, it's their failure that's stopping them. You know, Clemson shouldn't really always be good at football. Let's be honest. That's how good a job Dabo's done. Like if it's not the same, but if NC State won the national championship back to back, or Virginia Tech is probably a better comparison to Clemson. They had an exceptional quarterback in Michael Vick, except they had it essentially back to back, take out the 17 season. They had an exceptional quarterback, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20. And in that time, they won 2 national championships. That's what they've been. They have not proven that they are exceptional without those quarterbacks on the national level. And the other part you're leaving out is you have to, you have to have an exceptional quarterback to win the national championship. I know that bothers the Stetson Bennett haters, but it's your quarterback needs to play well. You know, the last time Ohio State won the national championship, they did not have a Justin Fields type quarterback. They did not have, a guy that was, you couldn't believe what you were seeing on the field. Well, you could in a way because of the way he was acting. But Alabama um, has has had a hard time winning the national championship without an exceptional quarterback. So quarterbacks really do matter a lot. That's why USC could be in really good position this fall and moving forward. We'll see about Notre Dame and LSU, but I think those changes probably benefit LSU more than they benefit Notre Dame. We know what Brian Kelly can do. We saw it at Cincinnati. We saw it at Notre Dame. Now he is in the best position that he could be in terms of powerful players. The problem is you're going into the SEC. That's one hesitation I've got about Oklahoma. We don't know what the future holds at Oklahoma. We have a new coach there with Brent Venables. You're going to be entering the league here in a matter of 3 years. Texas A&M, that's a little high for me. Clemson is a really good situation for Dabo. I don't know if it's a good situation for somebody else. That would be like sticking Auburn at number 9. We've watched them win a national championship. They probably should have won the national championship in 2004 or whenever it was, but they weren't given the opportunity to play. All of these programs are very good, but there's only a few of them I think that you can really say would be number 1. I do not think you can say Clemson is number 1. I do not think with their situation with being independent as well as the academic situation at Notre Dame, I don't think you could say they're number 1. I don't think you could say Oklahoma is number 1. I don't think you could say Texas A&M is number 1. SC, Texas, LSU, Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama, you could all say they could be the number 1 or the best job, whatever you want to call it. But I think if you take Nick Saban away from Alabama, that would be a challenging position for them to be in. We saw under Mark Richt just how Georgia could be without winning national championships, and they were consistently good. Ohio State is that way. LSU typically is that way. Texas is not. I mean, we've gone a decade without Texas mattering in any way. I mean, people talk so much about how bad the 90s were for Georgia. And back then, you only had 11 regular season games. Georgia had 10 win seasons twice that year, and twice that decade. And 3 other times, they had 9 win seasons 91, 98, and 90. Oh, God. There was another one in there somewhere. So half the decade were 9 wins or better. And people talk about how bad the 90s were for Georgia. Go look at the 90s for Texas. How bad? Go look at the 90s for Clemson and tell me how fun that was, or Oklahoma, to some degree Alabama, but not really. It definitely LSU. Certain schools have had staying power basically the entire time. Ohio State for sure. I mean, I think in many ways Ohio State, considering the Big Ten, that might be number one. LSU, I mean, those two really are the ones that could or should battle for it because they're not, number one, SC and Ohio State are not in the SEC fighting everybody. LSU just has that many kids. That's all there is to it. And when they're not in Louisiana, they're in Houston. So LSU has the ability to get kids. That you don't have Florida on this list, that is not a you don't have Florida, Florida State, or Miami on the list that I'm looking at right now. And that's hard to digest too. Now, it may be true. I do think Florida's a more difficult job than people realize, but there are so many players in that state, and that is a Florida Gator state. That is not a Seminole state. Miami has its area of the state, and Florida can't really mess with that a lot. But Florida has a lot of power. It has plenty of money. It has a lot of kids. When they get the right coach, and that is the real key here, um, they can be deadly. When they don't have the right coach, so they have sunk a little lower than you'd like if you're a Florida fan. I mean, I think the Dan Mullen time was a really pretty good time. We will see if that made sense firing him or pushing him out the door. But generally speaking, Oklahoma, Clemson, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, USC, Texas, LSU, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama. For Texas A&M to be one of the best jobs in college football, I'm going to need to see a few more 10-win seasons. The institutional support is there, no question, but they're not getting the job done on the field. And that is that a Jimbo thing? I mean, what if Brian Kelly were at Texas A&M? It would make me take them more seriously, even though he's won a national championship and Brian Kelly hasn't. I will be a little surprised if Brian Kelly does not win the national championship at LSU. I would be, but I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't happen because this league is so brutal. But in terms of top 10, a lot of people will say, hey, Georgia should be number one. They've got Atlanta. The state is as big as Florida, and they're not sharing it with anybody. It's not as big as Florida, but you get my point. In terms of players, there's a lot of players. They've done well in the Carolinas, but the challenge there, of course, is everyone around them. You've got Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, Florida State. Clemson is right up the road. There's plenty of challenges with being Georgia and being encircled by so many different good schools / your rivals, and that makes it tough. But the reason I would not have Clemson on here, the reason I would not have Oklahoma State on here, uh, is because there's no state of Clemson. There's no natural way to draw from those kids. Um, so they got to be okay in Georgia, Florida, and the Carolinas, and maybe parts of Virginia. Oklahoma needs Texas. And I wouldn't want a part of another state to be a key to my success. But I think this is a good group. It is a little bit what you want. Um, Generally speaking, I would say these are the teams that you'd say have the best jobs in college football.